Bambiz Marketing presents Elder Law Growth, the podcast that helps elder law and estate planning attorneys attract clients without wasting time or money. I'm your host, Amy Hurst. Let's dive in.
As we all know, there are two pieces of an advance directive. One is the healthcare power of attorney, which everyone should have and which totally works, whether you have dementia, whether the person has dementia or anything else. It's really the living will piece or the instructions to the healthcare agent and the forms that are used to do that, whether it's a combined form or a separate living will form. Some states have combined, some states have separate living will, but the part of the advance directive where you check off, I do or I don't want CPR or artificial nutrition and hydration, or to be put on a ventilator, antibiotics, et cetera, all those kinds of treatment decisions, that the living will piece doesn't work. Dementia, on the other hand, is a chronic degenerative disease. People live on 5 to 20 years from diagnosis is the general range. 8 years is the average. And people's cognitive and physical abilities decline over time. So having one set of checkboxes around I do want or I don't want this or that doesn't work.
That was Randi Siegel, the president of DocuBank, with a long history of working in healthcare. And she's here to spread the word on a brand new directive. It's maybe 5 years old, but this directive needs to be available to everybody in the older generation. It's the Dementia Directive. With dementia and Alzheimer's becoming more prevalent, this directive addresses issues that other legal documents do not. So in this podcast episode, Randi is going to shed light on what this handles, because there's a lot of gray areas when it comes to dementia and the requests and the different stages that they go through, that your clients will go through. She's going to shed light on how this is so vital and so important and why your future clients need this. Let's dive in.
In my experience, estate planning and elder law attorneys are interested in the concept of a dementia directive. And first, often it's, I didn't know there was such a thing. And the answer is yes, it's pretty new. It's not surprising that you weren't aware of it. But because dementia is becoming so prevalent in the population, that it is something that going forward is going to be even more prevalent in firms' practices than it is now. Among people who are over 65, 1 in 9 has dementia. So it's more than 10% of people over 65. Wow. So they're seeing, we're seeing it all the time. If someone comes in who's over 85, and hopefully they've done estate planning before 85, but if they haven't, or if you're looking at your existing clients, 1 in 3 people over 85 has dementia. 1 in 3. I mean, that's a lot. And you can say, the downside is 1 in 3 people has dementia. The upside is live to 85. That's a good thing generally, hopefully. So, but dementia is a function largely, not entirely, but in part of aging. And the older one gets, the more likely that is to develop. And we had less of it. It was less prevalent in the population when people didn't live as long. So as life expectancy increases, or at least as it has increased, we've seen more of it in older folks. Another statistic like that is when someone hits 70, there's a 1 in 3 chance that they will develop dementia over their lifetime. So just one more, and then I'll be done with the statistics.
Hey, we're all attorneys here. We love numbers.
Okay. If a senior is, and that's someone who's over 65, if they're receiving help at home, almost half of those people have dementia. And that's often the main reason that they're needing help. But, as your existing clients age, they're going to develop it. And it's useful to keep that in mind as they come back in the office for restatements or reviews, that they might have had some cognitive decline depending on how old they are. And it might help you just be more attuned to the fact that could be going on. So the reason that dementia directives have been developed, and there are a number of them, there's at least 10 different ones that have been developed, and I talk mainly about 4 or 5 of them as examples of different types. It's because the standard advanced directives don't really fill the bill in a lot of ways for people with dementia. So as we all know, there are 2 pieces of an advanced directive. One is the healthcare power of attorney, which everyone should have and which totally works, whether you have dementia, whether the person has dementia or anything else. It's really the living will piece or the instructions to the healthcare agent and the forms that are used to do that, whether it's a combined form or a separate living will form. Some states have combined, some states have separate living will, but the part of the advanced directive where you check off, I do or I don't want CPR or artificial nutrition and hydration, or to be put on a ventilator, antibiotics, et cetera, all those kinds of treatment decisions, that the living will piece doesn't work. Dementia, on the other hand, is a chronic degenerative disease. People live on 5 to 20 years from diagnosis is the general range. 8 years is the average. And people's cognitive and physical abilities decline over time. So having one set of checkboxes around I do want or I don't want this or that doesn't work, because in fact, what we've all realized is that people with a debilitating chronic condition like this may want different things in different courses of their illness and different courses of the decline. So that's the main purpose behind many of the dementia directives. It's really twofold. One, it's to address the medical situation that people with dementia have. And that is that they may want different types of care treatment and different amounts and aggressiveness of care treatment at different points in their development of dementia. And the second piece is that because it's a long-term degenerative disease that affects all parts of one's life, to really be useful to someone in expressing their wishes are not just medical. They really need to, it's helpful to have someone think about and express their wishes around other things that aren't medical, such as where I want to live, how much information I want to be told, what to do about driving. There's a whole set of non-clinical things. And then the third category that gets a lot of play here is, it's a very specific thing, but really important. And that's thinking about eating and drinking, in clinical terms called nutrition and hydration. And so there's these 3 sets of activities that people may have wishes around that need to be expressed specifically for dementia. So that's what these various dementia directives try to do. And they tackle the medical and the eating and drinking and the non-medical to different degrees. Some of them are only dealing with medical. Some of them don't deal with the nutrition and hydration, but don't deal with the non-medical. They're a mix, which is why we actually have a handout that I think we've shared with you, that so that firms can take a look at the different ones and see what works for them. But Yeah, but that's the general sense of what the kinds of what they're trying to get at, that a standard living will does not address at all.
It answers so many other questions that a normal advance directive or any other legal document would not.
Mm-hmm.
And those statistics are staggering. Do you know just how new these dementia directives are?
So the earlier ones date back to the 5 years ago or so, but they haven't gotten a lot of play because they're there aren't that many, and the champions have been more in the medical community and not in the legal community. They really function best as another document for the healthcare agent to use, just like a regular living will does. They serve that purpose better than they do as a standalone document that trumps the healthcare power, that trumps the healthcare agent. So it's another way to do better guidance to the agent.
I can't believe they're only 5 years old.
Yeah, ish. Yeah.
Wow.
Developed mostly by physicians who deal with two types of organizations have really taken the lead. Physicians are one, and dementia directives that I think is the most robust is from Dartmouth Hitchcock Medical Center, and it really covers all the bases. It deals with the stages of dementia, it deals with eating and nutrition, and some of the non-medical stuff. So that's a good one. And the other type have been developed by end-of-life advocacy organizations that have really taken the lead. And some of those, the one in New York, for instance, I would recommend for people to look at if they're particularly interested in the eating and drinking piece, and how much we could have a whole other discussion about this if you want to. It's fascinating and really important. To what extent are you force feeding people? Because you lose the ability to eat on your own. So what extent do you force people? To what extent do you let them lead? To what extent, are you considered starving people or brutalizing them if you feed them or don't feed them? It's very interesting, and takes a lot of thought, and it's an interesting and controversial area for attorneys, I think, to know about and at least be aware of.
Absolutely. And I'm really thankful that you're on here to explain this to our elder law and estate planning attorneys who have never heard of this new type of this directive. Could be just, it's the future. Right. That's what I'm thinking, because it's only going to get more and more prevalent.
And the drugs that have been coming out lately, it's unclear how helpful they will be. Hopefully we will have additional ones in the future that will be more so, but for now, we're not seeing that yet. My background is in health policy and in hospital administration. I was a hospital executive for a number of years. So like when I speak to the detail that I was speaking to, it's from personal experience and understanding of how these things actually work inside the institution.
Interesting. So you know how frustrating it is then.
Yeah. So on all sides. And hospital staff will tell you, I mean, ER docs have been surveyed and said that it's like 70% of them or more say it's incredibly helpful when they have advanced directives in the ER when someone's come in who's very sick, and they don't have them. They have them around a quarter of the time that they're needed if they're lucky. So it's a problem. And actually, there have been studies that have shown that when family members of a loved one who's passed were able to have an advanced directive and had conversations with that loved one to use in making their medical care decisions at the end of those lives, that those surviving family members actually do much better psychologically 6 months after the death of that person. They have less anxiety, less depression, they're more at peace. So it's really also a gift to the family that survives. And we had one person, spouse, who's told us, that the doctor wanted the advance directive, and she said, well, I don't have the paper with me. And he said, well, go home and get it. And this was and her husband was dying of cancer. And then she realized that she did have the card with her. And she said, I'm not going to go do that, because if I go home and do that, you're going to have him on life support by the time I get back. And this is the gentleman who didn't want that. And so she pulled out the card and said, here, take the, here's the card, go get the advance directive. But the story behind DocuBank is that we are a digital directory for advance directives, so that individuals and attorneys would register clients, so that you can assure the clients that their advance directives will be available instantly 24/7. Each client receives a wallet card to go in their wallet.
But it's not like a big piece of paper. It's
just a wallet. It has a member number and a PIN, and hospital staff or the client themselves or their spouse can either go online and print it, or call, or have it faxed. If you want to send them something, you can't email it. They can fax it, and from a fax, they can put it in the chart, scan it, put it in the chart, put it in the paper chart, if there is one at all. But you can't email a directive to the hospital. The staff don't have an email address that they can receive it from. It's not the way hospitals are set up. And some hospitals now, the staff won't be able to go online and download it. It depends. But you can always fax, and you can't bring any USB drive, because they will not plug it into their system and risk infecting it with a virus. So
wow, the things that you don't even think about. Wow.
Right. And the other thing about the availability of directives is that even if you have given them to the hospital and they're in the electronic medical record, sometimes staff doesn't know how to find it quickly, because, and again, depends upon the electronic medical record that the hospital uses and how they handle these documents. In some cases now, there's a special spot for this document. You can just look for it right away. In other cases, it's put into this file of outside records, and any record that's been faxed from another hospital or doctor's outpatient notes, it's all dumped in there, and nobody has time to find it. So
no man's land.
We like to joke that when hospital electronic medical records are really working properly, our service will no longer be needed, and that would be a good thing. That would be a happy problem, because that would mean that the information flow is working and the care is working well. We're not there yet, so until we're there, we'll do what we're doing. We also have a very long history of participating in annual client maintenance programs and firms, including a renewal of the DocuBank membership as part of the package of services in the maintenance program. And also, I'm perfectly happy to, if anyone of your listeners are particularly interested in this, I'm happy to have a follow-up conversation or an email exchange with any of them. Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate your time.
Thank you. Appreciate it. It's lovely to talk with you.
Thanks for listening to the Elder Law Growth Podcast, the place to be for all things marketing for elder law and estate planning law firms. If you liked this podcast, please leave us a review wherever you are listening to this podcast. If you'd like to outsource your marketing to our team, go to bambiz.net and book a free call with us today.